Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you the wrong way to fix a John Deere oil pressure gauge. This is the oil pressure gauge off of my John Deere 830. I believe this is the original gauge that it left the factory with. Can't be 100% positive, but everything else on that tractor seems to be pretty original, so I'm guessing it is. So you can see here it says AF2729R. John Deere. Anyway, when I first started the tractor, after it had been sitting for about 20 plus years, I saw the oil pressure gauge move up to medium where it is now, but it has never moved back down. And so I need to get this rebuilt, or at least if I can't get this one rebuilt, I need to go and buy a new oil pressure gauge. But before I do that, I figure I would try to get that needle unstuck. So I'm going to squirt some penetrating oil up in here. And then I've got my compressed air, and I'll apply a little bit of pressure, see if we can get things unstuck. So step one is going to be just to squirt a little bit of PB Blaster in the back side of this gauge. Press that tightly against there. And then I've got my compressed air here. And this is set, my pressure regulator is set to like 25 pounds, and so I don't think I'm going to be blowing anything up. And if you watch here, after I press this, the pressure actually dies down quite a bit. Let's see if you can tell. So, I mean, it's barely any pressure's coming out now. Nothing. Here's my pressure regulator on my air compressor. As you can see, I've got it set to about 45-ish PSI, and I understand that this is, not super calibrated and things like that, so I got to be careful that I don't damage the oil pressure gauge, but I think it should be able to handle 45 PSI. Just pulsing the air. Oh boy, that moved it all right. That may not have been very smart. There we go. So it popped down to low again. Okay, I'm gonna see if this works again. But I am gonna turn my pressure on my compressor back down to like 30. Okay, so I've changed my setup a little bit. I did not like squirting compressed air directly into the back of this thing. So what I've done is I've added this long hose. This is just a piece of fuel line to the back side of the pressure gauge, the oil pressure gauge. And now I can relieve the pressure from my air nozzle, and I can just stick it right in there, and that way it's not such an abrupt shock load on that pressure gauge. I don't want to damage it. So if you see, I think it seems to be working now. Let's see if I can hold that. So this here is an aftermarket oil pressure gauge that I purchased online. It's not a real high dollar unit. The reason I bought it was because in the image or the picture online, it said that it did have the part number down here. When I got the oil pressure gauge, it didn't have that. And I had also decided that maybe rather than just buying an aftermarket one like this, I would go ahead, if and I'd try to just rebuild my original John Deere gauge. Anyway, I'm not going to be using this oil pressure gauge, first of all, because it doesn't have the part number down here like I wanted. Also because back here in the back, the connection is different than what the original had. And so you can see here, the original has kind of a pipe thread style, and then it's kind of domed out here on the top. This one, I think it's still a pipe thread, but actually when I tried to connect the original fitting right here, it did not want to screw on very well at all. And I decided, I was like, no, I'm not going to mess around with it. I don't want to have to change all the fittings and everything. So that was the other reason why I decided that I was going to return this. So, but what we can do with this, I can pressurize this gauge with air, just like I did here, my gauge. I can see how much the needle moves on this new aftermarket gauge and compare that to the John Deere gauge. I don't know which will be more accurate, this aftermarket one that was made in India, or this old John Deere one that is probably 75 years old. No, not quite 75. It says 59. So it's 65 years old about. So anyway, which is more accurate? I don't know. If they agree or if they disagree, which one do I trust? Comment down below what you guys think. Okay, here we are, same setup as before. So keep in mind, my pressure regulator on my air compressor, if you trust that, is about 30 psi. That's what I've got it set to. Just over 30 psi. So this says that 30 psi here is just over medium. Let's try to bleed the air out slowly on this. There you go. Just trying not to shock the gauge with a bunch of pressure being applied or removed. So now let's pressurize this John Deere gauge. Pretty good. So it varies a little bit from this gauge. 30 psi on my aftermarket gauge is right above medium, whereas 30 psi on the old original gauge is kind of halfway between medium and high. Which do you trust?